Midnight Mormons, mature and childish.
Cult apology, of course.
I knew you come across as a sweet guy. You kind of like look like Shermie the elf from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Don't like to make toys.
You know, naive people doing naive things to try to justify belief.
Kwaku L, Cardon Ellis, and Brad Whitbeck, and then Midnight Mormons, where they get even more vicious and cruel.
Then they fought us.
You are going to be tarred with the same brush as these two, and it will not be good for you any more than it already is.
Because you don't need 20 friends. You just need 3 motherfuckers. You can take over a country. Okay, that's what we're confused as Americans. We think we need all these motherfuckers. You give me 3 bad motherfuckers, and you're finished. You understand me? You're fucking finished.
Brace yourself for another episode of
That's something that has been concerning me a little bit in the ex-Mormon world. When you leave the moral framework of Mormonism, sometimes you let go of some principles and ideas that, even though they're found in Mormonism, they're not unique to Mormonism, but they're still really important for us to get along in the messiness of life, and forgiveness and grace are a big part of that.
We have a rising generation that is struggling with very difficult questions and are looking for answers.
I know this video is going to get people getting mad at me. I get really nervous when you look off camera like that, Kwaku. Siaka's bringing up a really good point. He says, I want to judge a man for exactly...
Whoa, hey, Cardon.
What?
Chill.
Now, here's where it gets weird, okay?
ignition in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Midnight Mormons live stream. Today we got a special edition for you.
Hey, guys.
Well, what was that? Was that you, Brad?
Yeah, man.
Okay, I was about to say, no better way. I mean, if anybody ever asks if this is actually what we do, and if it's produced live or not, I think there's your answer. Have you ever seen those TikToks where it says, like, they open up the laptop and it's like, oh, so yeah, that's kind of like what just happened, except for
Yes.
It was probably some kind of comedic meme, because you are pure as the driven snow, Apostle 2025, the way things are going.
Yeah, yeah. Whoa, that's a lot earlier. I guess I need to
It's the
back
earliest, but anyway, for any of those, for those of you who are just tuning in and aren't aware, there's been a controversy about some allegations about racial slurs said during the BYU versus Duke women's volleyball game. And at first it seemed to be a kind of traditional send out the corporate comments, disparage the institution, and everybody just gets what they want out of it politically and financially. But unfortunately, it looks like there's been some deep dives and digging and investigation going on. And it seems that a lot of people have been lied to about what's actually happened, what was said, who was there, so on and so forth. We take this very seriously. And so we know you do too. So we wanted to do a little bit of like a deep dive into what actually happened, who's lying, who is not. And we're actually hopefully going to have Kwaku showed up. Unfortunately, apparently the fire alarm is going off in his building and he's evacuated out of his building. So he's going to be joining us here. Interestingly enough, he's the one that wanted to do the live stream in the first place. and get a lot of his investigation out there. So yeah, hopefully he'll be joining us soon. But for now, it's actually me and Brad Whitbeck holding up the fort. If any of you guys have any questions, make sure you give us a super chat in the on the tube of you. I'm going to be trying to regulate those, and so is Brad. So make sure you guys hit us up in the chat if you have any kind of questions you want to get us or anything like that. So Brad, I'm going to toss to you real fast. Do you think you could give us a rundown of what's going on?
Yeah, so the basics of it are this, that at the BYU volleyball game against Duke, there was a setter who, not a setter, one of the Duke players, when she was serving, says that she had a racial slur yelled at her while every time that she went to serve.
Okay.
And that as she was going up, as she was playing, she could distinctly hear racial slur being yelled at her. And so she reported it after, like, her story goes that she heard it and then went and heard it again, told a teammate, and then the teammate was like, hey, let's tell the coaches, let's get this figured out. So they did. BYU had a cop come over and stand in between them and where they're close to the student section, right? Because where they're serving from, where they're playing from is really close to the BYU student section. And it was like a record number of people in the crowd. So I imagine it was really, really loud.
Yeah.
Now, as the cop was standing there, it doesn't appear, I guess, okay, her story continues that more of the slurs were yelled out the longer that it went. And at the very end, it intensified, right?
Okay.
So that's how it all went. It kind of, I don't know if it seemed like it was going to go anywhere until her godmother tweeted this out. And she kind of garnered a ton of attention off of this by saying, hey, this thing happened, and like made it about, hey, how horrible is BYU and how racist are all of these people for allowing this sort of thing to happen, you know?
Yeah, I'm going to try
and it ballooned from there.
Yeah, I'm going to try and catch anybody up that's just joining us right now to give an idea of what happened. Basically, over the weekend, there was a volleyball game in which this girl, and by the way, I actually feel bad for this girl because to me, she's a neutral character in all of this.
Yeah.
I have played, people don't realize this, but I was actually considering walking onto the BYU volleyball team at a certain point. A lot of my friends from Southern California that I played with had either been recruited, they'd recommend that I talk to the coach and so on and so forth. I was like a D teamer, dude. This is not at all about me. I'm just trying to say I'm very familiar with the inner workings of the volleyball program and that specific facility. I've played on it. I've had my thumbs broken by 6'11" human man, like angelic freaks of nature that get recruited into D1. Like I was all CIF, which is all state California, middle blocker. And at 6'6", day one, when I show up on the court at BYU for volleyball, I'm instantly the second shortest dude on the court. And the guy that has my position is a 6'11" dude with a 42-inch vertical. I was 6'6" with a 36-inch vertical, which was pretty good at that time. Nothing compared to these like half human, half eagle griffin hybrids that like call themselves D1 athletes, right? So anyway, obviously I'm protective of that legacy. It's a great program. I loved it. I've been in the building. And so I thought this was odd when I hear this. So anyway, here's the claim. This girl who seems, does not seem ill-intentioned, claimed that she heard racial slurs said at her while she was getting ready to serve. Now, when you look at the video, she's facing away from the crowd. She's claiming that it's saying this. And during a game, especially a tight game between two very good teams, adrenaline's running high, the whole 9 yards. I had a very beautiful conversation with Mally Bonner today about this incident. And I said, you know what? I believe this girl. Unfortunately, we've made belief like this new term where it's like hashtag believe all women. And if you don't believe them, it's a purity test. And it's like, dare I say, an article of faith from a false religion, you know, this idea of belief. But I do want to say from the beginning, I believe that this girl is not lying in the sense that she thinks she heard something. And from what we
and I agree with you on this, Cardon, because what I don't want to have happen is people lash out and do the exact same thing that ended up being done to BYU, right? Like, hey, here's a story. We don't have any evidence for it, but we're now going to attack the entire institution and call it racist. Where I've seen people start saying, oh, she made it up. This is a Jussie Smollett situation, which I don't think is a good analogy because we had evidence that he lied, right?
Yes.
There's no evidence to suggest that she lied about this. I think she sincerely thought she heard it, right?
And there's evidence that others are trying to profit off of her, which would make it makes her a neutral player. And I was just in Home Depot. This is what I said to Mauli today. Yeah. I was just in Home Depot yesterday and somebody literally called out my name and I saw them. And so I walked up to her. I was like, I'm sorry. Did you need something? You know? And speaking English, the guy, he looks at me and he's like, ¿Hablo español? Or no, ¿habla español? I was like, sí, hablo español. Me llamaste, ¿no? And he was like, no, dije que está cargando eso. Cargando is the word for to load or to lift a heavy object onto a cart. And he was yelling cargando to his friend, and I thought he said Cardon. You know what I'm saying? So the thing that was cargado sounded like Cardon, close enough that I actually walked up and I said, did you need my help? Like I had so honestly thought I heard my name that I walked up to a total stranger and said, can I help you? So if this girl is going to come out and say, hey, you know, I think I don't want to say under the duress, but under the influence of all the adrenaline of the game and that day, I'm afraid that I heard racial slurs that all of us agree are taboo. Fine. Let's investigate it and let's prosecute this if this is, you know, something, because it's socially unacceptable. Okay. So they look into it and what do they find? Keep going. I interrupted you, Brad.
Oh, yeah. So basically what ends up happening here is it balloons and everyone's condemning BYU as racist. And then they start looking into it and they start realizing, hey, there's a couple of things that don't add up here. We have video of the entire situation and nowhere in all of the video, nowhere at all, is there a single instance of someone recording a racial slur being yelled, right?
Yeah. Through
anything. So they find that doesn't happen. The guy who got banned that ended up being said like, hey, we banned the person responsible. Like BYU said, we banned the person responsible.
Yeah.
They kind of maybe did. What really happened is a guy with special needs came up and was approaching the Duke team after. He was identified by his voice and the way he sounded.
Okay.
And they said, that's the guy. That's what he sounded like. And they said, oh, okay, we'll ban him for life right now. But it turns out that guy probably wasn't in the student section even.
And this is what bothers me is also I want to be very specific. Like Jordan Peterson says, get really specific. He was banned indefinitely, which doesn't mean he's for sure banned for life. But we have stumbled upon the irony of protected classes here. And this kind of pisses me off because it seems like they've thrown a kid under the bus because they were looking for a sacrificial lamb so they could do the whole boomer. Oh, we apologize. Yes, we know we're racist and we're bad. But it's not passed. But if we ban a guy, if we sacrifice a student, will you be appeased at the altar of angry, you know, we can't handle anything with any level of maturity discussion that we have on a national level about race around here, right? So
yeah, because really it's a lose-lose situation for BYU, no matter what they do.
So they banned one protected class. They banned one protected class, the physically or mentally handicapped, in order to appease the social gods of another. Like, how cruel is that? And I don't think that's what Rachel Richardson, the volleyball player, was even asking for. Again, she's a neutral character. All of these bad apples and bad players around her are operating because the media goes nuts and they want to get clickbait. And of course, what is more clickbaity than saying, look, Mormons, man, they're still racist. So they end up coming out with a bunch of headlines. You can't see it on your end on Zoom, but I'll put it on screen that, Black Duke volleyball player subject to racial slurs during match. There ends up being another one where, ESPN comes out guns blazing and, does the full-blown condemnation of BYU. There they've got one of their main anchors. And I mean, this was on every single screen and news outlet for the entire weekend. But as we round the corner, what ends up happening, Brad?
So here's the thing. All of these things that are condemning BYU are condemning it for a lack of response. Pull up that last article that you just had.
Okay, let me see if I can pull up that last one. ESPN blast BYU over response, that one?
Yeah.
Okay, right here. Boom. So she says, my fellow teammates were targeted and heckled throughout the entirety of the match. And then it says they, quote, failed to take the necessary steps to stop the unacceptable behavior and create a safe environment. And that's where people have really started taking issue because it looks like that wasn't what happened based off of
exactly, because when we've got this going on, like, hey, they failed to make it a safe environment. If all of the video evidence coming out is saying, like, we can't see anything that shows that this was an unsafe environment, right? They put a cop next to them to, like, get between them in the section, right? Like, they took steps to make this better. Like, that's the part that is weird to me. Like, what more did they expect? And what I think must have happened here is that she heard someone yelling Cougars, right? And maybe someone yelling it weirdly and loudly and, like, in a high-pitched, quick way or something.
Yeah.
And it came across to her as something else, And
what made you say that? Should I put these up on the should I put these up on the screen? Like, we've got a roster of the Duke team here. And there's a lot of things like Morgan Klinger, the libero, which is a very specific position, at a whopping 5'7". That surprises me in D1 athletics. Like, these girls are giants. That's the other thing. I dated this girl on the volleyball team that was 6 foot. Yeah. She was 6'2". It was crazy. It was the only time I didn't have to, like, crane down to kiss somebody, right? And like, oh my gosh, the shortest person on that, like 5'7", it's funny. She's like a short stack on this roster. There's 6'5", 6'3", 5'9", 6'3". Like, these are towers that are walking around, right? So you see a bunch of, I don't know, going through what I went through at Home Depot. You don't want to throw somebody under the bus. She was facing away from an audience. I believe that Rachel Richardson is telling the truth, that she thought she heard something. But when you see the rosters of the teams, you understand the nature of the audience. Like, I've been there. Like, BYU fans are the freaking nicest people out there. They're all but showing up with cookies. You know what I'm saying? With sorry for the athletes out there that are playing. So
they can get pretty nasty. BYU fans.
The volleyball ones.
I've been a ticket taker, man. Is volleyball more chill?
Oh my gosh! Like,
here's the thing though.
They're one step away from golf clappers. Like, you go to the Utah Jazz game and it's like, holy crap. You go to the BYU versus University of Utah game and it's like, I just wear black. I just wear neutral colors. I don't even want to be part of that insanity, right? But BYU games, it's just not as crazy because it's not as crazy of a sport. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah, so I guess part of the thing that has been bugging me about this is just how people are so ready to lambast not just the guy in the crowd who doesn't look like he's actually even a BYU student, right? Yeah. But then expand that to the entire religion and, like, off of the entire school, right?
Yeah, I've got that.
Where does that justification come from? That, oh, hey, this thing was said, therefore the entire school must be condemned. Therefore, the entire religion that has the school has to be condemned. Like, what is that?
So here's the clip. I think you're referencing the clip from Ray Williams. Hopefully I don't blow our ears out here really fast, but I'm gonna play this one.
As I said, BYU wants to make this about one guy. No. Multiple fans use racist language. And you mean tell me ain't no video and audio?
You hit the nail on the head. It's not just one person. BYU is a Mormon university, and if you know anything about the Mormon religion, it's public knowledge that they run a whisper campaign that anybody with darker skin is inherently evil and pretty much has no shot of going to heaven. So if you look at demographics of BYU, less than 1% of the people who attend that university are Mormon. So what I'm saying is BYU has got to do more than just say we're committed to ending racism at BYU. We're committed that racism has no place here. Yes, it does. And you're going to have to do the hard work to really try to, if you want to separate yourself from what the Mormon religion has been. I mean, that's just what it is.
So she literally says, and the host admits that there is no visual or video evidence of any of these claims, and then says it's part of our religion that there's a whisper campaign.
That it's common knowledge. Like, what a wildly bigoted thing for her to say. And what I want to point out is I admire her for wanting to protect someone she feels is in danger. I think that's a noble,
feel that?
valuable thing to do.
That was, by the way, just so our audience knows, that is a sitting member of the House of Representatives, somebody who has access to House Intelligence Committee resources, somebody who at the drop of a hat can call and get the president of the university, of the athletic department, of BYU police. This person has more access to any knowledge, secular or ecclesiastical, about what happened that week. And she chose to replace that with narrative. She's running for the governorship of Georgia. And here, Ray Williams, okay, obviously a fellow African-American brother, if we believe that his profile pic represents who he is calling out this person, saying you have replaced fact with fiction. You've replaced decency with myth. And this is what I mean when I say that there are people that are profiting off this and pushing this narrative, not the original girl, because she wants to get on TV to talk about her campaign.
Yeah. And see, the thing here is, like, it is a good thing to defend the defenseless, right?
Yes.
But right here, we see someone weaponizing that into attacking an entire religion because it's going to win her social points, you know?
And is this kid that got kicked out defenseless? Is the kid that just got banned for life defenseless? Apparently he's mentally handicapped, doesn't even know the situation that he's in. And now and we don't know what degree of mental handicap it is either, right? So the cops report said something about probably being in some level of Asperger's, right? But so we don't even know what's going on with that entire situation either, right? There is so much that we don't know, and yet people are so comfortable to just say, hey, we're going to denigrate this entire religion because of what happened here. It's crazy to me because, like, this doesn't represent what we teach. This doesn't represent what we believe at all. Yeah. Your color of your skin is not going to stop you from getting into heaven. Yeah.
It's wild. I don't even know where she might have pulled that from.
And it's important that we reiterate this again, just so that those that hate us, that are constantly trying to clip the things that we say and put it online, we wholesale renounce any kinds of forms of racism or bigotry. It is not the Christian way. It is not the example that Christ put towards us. There is an ecclesiastical, a moral, and a social reason to completely eschew racism in any kind of form. We follow the admonition of Paul and of our prophet Russell M. Nelson to have a society that puts this behind itself, okay? At the same time, we believe in habeas corpus, that it's all right to say, okay, show me the body of proof that you have of these accusations against us. And before we absolutely lambast an unknown kid who came to what he perceived as cheer a team, and by the way, it may not have even been him, but before we completely sacrifice the altar of social justice, some member of the audience that's going to live the rest of his life being that guy, unable to get a job, you know what I'm saying? Because people follow him around and say, you're the person that said this. Before we ruin that person's life, we at least want to say, hey, okay, is there a possibility that you were mistaken? And from where I stand, it seems like there's a possibility in which this athlete might have been mistaken. And the video evidence seems to point in that direction. And even the most fervently opposed to Mormonism media institutions are being forced to recognize that. Even the Salt Lake Tribune has come out and said, Kwaku was the one that jumped on this first. He said he's like, this seems fishy to me. And so he started scouring every Snapchat he could find of every single one of his friends. It's in all these different little cheer squads and all these different little student pep squads and everything like that. And he said he could not find a thing. And he was able to watch virtually the entire game, every serve she had, every minute she was on the court, just on Snapchat, Twitter, and different little feeds he got a hold of. And he said he didn't hear anything. Then on top of it, we're starting to get investigations that are getting done by BYU police and so on and so forth that started coming out the next day. And guess what we start seeing here? We start seeing, even in the Salt Lake Tribune, that apparently the fan who was banned by BYU does not appear to have yelled slurs at volleyball match, campus police say. But it's not just the Salt Lake Tribune. You look at Fox 13 coming out. There's no evidence found of banned BYU fan using the previously claimed slurs, right? And it starts looking like people were taking advantage of an honest inquiry. And this young athlete, again, I find zero fault with her complaint. It's okay to complain. It's okay to complain and say, hey, I think I heard this. And let me tell you, if I were the athletic director, I'd be like, that ain't happening on my court. And I would look at every single bit of video evidence, and I would look at every single angle of this that I could. And if it didn't happen, I'd say, look, I'm pleased to inform you that our fan base doesn't appear to have said what you said. It looks like there could be these other things. I think you were mistaken. I totally believe you. You're a great athlete. I look forward to playing with you again, but it looks like this didn't happen. And then it all goes away. But that's not the way that people running for office wanted it to be. And it looks like, I think it was the godmother of this person, this athlete who is running for office, ironically as a judge. Look at her Twitter profile. MSNBC, you can always find these frustrated suburban W women. H, we is tired too. Then here saying elevating these white men to hero status is taking out a white woman. Here's 30. I don't even know how long I can have it on the screen before YouTube disallows it. But here's somebody who's literally saying, if you're white, you totally wouldn't understand. Bernie Sanders rallies are so white. Would expect nothing less from a pale white chick. Sit down, Becky. These. How do you not call this person an anti-white racist? And when it's that person who's breaking the story through a press release as part of their political campaign, I start questioning motivations. That's not an ad hominem attack if you are questioning a conflict of interest. And I question whether or not this person had a conflict of interest to elevate their political campaign by throwing an entire religion on the bus. That had they done for Jews, had they done this to a Jewish synagogue, they would be no different than the brown shirts and the shock troops of the National Socialist Party in Berlin in 1938.
It's pretty wild to watch. We got a super chat with Latter-day Saint on Fire saying, what should be happening is every black member of the church should show up on social media and say, stop calling me racist and my religion too.
Fair.
Yeah, I've actually seen a decent number of people who are saints of color showing up saying, hey, whoa, what are we going to do? Like, there was one that said, like, so is Duke going to apologize for the witch hunt? Because that's something that I'm wondering too. Like, hey, as we're seeing all of this play out, it looks like the evidence would suggest that this didn't actually happen. Are we going to see an actual apology issued saying, hey, BYU, we're sorry for calling everyone in your religion absolutely racist and horrible? Like, is that going to happen?
Yeah. Here it is.
Because I wonder about that, because I think there's a couple of things that we can do in this situation.
Yeah.
One thing we can do is figure out what we would do if we ever were in this situation, if someone did say a slur like that in a game. And commit to ourselves that we would stop it. You know,
and they put.
I can't imagine that anyone I know would have just let that happen. You know.
Yeah, and also you look at the pictures of the game, and there's pictures in the sports profiles of before in her first serve. There's no officer, but then the athletic director sticks one's an actual uniformed badge officer, and another one's part of the athletic department. Sticks 2 personnel right there facing the crowd, listening the whole time. They've interviewed that person. They interviewed a student, I believe, named Jacob Hansen, that was like in the first row with 4 other students. Then behind him, there was another. They've interviewed like 5 or 6 students who have all surrendered copies of their video evidence of the game and have not been able to corroborate anything. And this is why I'm a huge fan of every cop a camera. Like I've known so many guys that like when every cop a camera came out, I said, dude, let's do it. You want to? Because it's going to vindicate so many good cops. For every one bad one that we find using excessive force, we're going to vindicate 30 whose lives have been ruined by woke garbage. I have a lot of first responders in my home community. It's loaded with policemen, firemen, nurses, a lot of agricultural and forestry department people live in my hometown. It's a bedroom community of first responders that work for the government. And for every one dude that I've seen go to prison for being a bad egg, I've seen 50 people's lives ruined just for false accusations, lawyers that can make a quick buck going after low-hanging fruit. You know what I'm saying? Woke garbage ruining people's lives. And the cameras exonerate these people. And right now, it's looking like the cameras are exonerating these people of one of the worst accusations you can have leveled against you right now. So anyway, I interrupted you. Keep going. I apologize, Brad.
No. You're totally good. Yeah, it's a weird situation because it's kind of like we talked about earlier, it's this lose-lose situation where it feels like the truth of what happened doesn't even matter anymore, because I'm seeing people online who are like, well, it doesn't matter if it didn't actually happen. Now is the time for BYU to like look at how racist it has been in the past, right? And just throwing it under the bus still, which makes me feel like, oh, okay, so you were just looking for an excuse? Like, what the heck? And so it's something where, I don't know, I want to try to find a positive way out of this, you know, to say like, look, we don't think she's a liar for saying what she's said. It was probably something that was misunderstood. And let's commit to fighting back against racism in any of its forms, right?
Yes,
and standing up against racism in any of its forms.
But let's learn from the past. Like, okay, I'm making this comparison only because, and I swear we have to do 1 million of these preambles so nobody accuses us of insensitivity and all this other garbage that they want to lambaste you for now. But I'm making this example only because it's a well-known example, not because I think that it's an exact example. But they just found, did you know that they just found within the past like 4 or 5 years, somebody came across the original criminal complaint or warrant that the girl gave against Emmett Till.
Really?
Emmett Till, yes. The murder of Emmett Till is considered the gruesome murder that launched the modern civil rights campaign. And his mother had like an open casket funeral, so the media had to see how he was brutalized. And I mean, it's a heartbreaking story in which there was a white woman in the South that claimed that Emmett Till had whistled at her and made some kind of sexually provocative comment that was unacceptable to the people in the community. And they basically formed a lynch mob and did an extrajudicial killing of a U.S. citizen, violating all of our most sacred civil rights, okay? And that's what launched a lot of what we consider the modern civil rights movement, right? Well, now that they found the warrant, they have physical evidence that the police did not follow the protocols. And it's kind of been panned as this like, oh, those renegades, you know, coming out of the woods and being, what's the word? Starts with a V when you exercise your own judgment and your own vengeance. What do you call
vigilantes?
Vigilantes, yeah.
It's
kind of that crazy vigilantism. And now it's kind of looking like, dude, no, like you guys allowed mob rule by not following the protocols of, you know, First Amendment, Second, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights and so on and so forth, and these protections that all of us have as U.S. citizens when going through arrest from the state. You know what I'm saying? The first is a criminal complaint has to be filed, and there has to be an arrest. And, you know, you didn't follow any of these protocols, and now they're actually calling to have like some kind of it can't be done because everybody's dead now, and this happened 60 years ago. You know.
Oh man.
But they've found the warrant. So let's learn from history. A complaint has been lodged. A complaint has been lodged that just like this woman said Emmett Till whistled at her, there's this athlete saying, okay, I had the N-word hurled at me in an inappropriate way during an athletic event. And they're not the same. They're not the same. I'm only using this example because Emmett Till's so much more well understood because of how all of us have learned about civil rights and stuff, right? So we have to accept the complaint, then investigate it and figure out if this really happened or not. Because had we done an investigation, Emmett Till would be with us today. But since we're not, and we're just forming these digital, you know, mobs, we're literally behaving as a society no different than they did in the 40s and 50s.
And here's the thing with the social media aspect of it. I feel like social media is weird, and it's incentivized everybody to have as hot of a take as they can, as quickly as they can, right?
Yeah.
Everyone gets up in arms and outrage. Outrage is a better currency than actual money because, I mean, you have the right title. What?
That's a great quote. Outrage is a better currency than actual money. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt.
I mean, I worked at an ad agency for long enough to realize, hey, look, you make a lot of money off of advertisements, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of these companies, all of these websites that are running these stories, they have ads running on them. They're making a ton of money off of these clicks. And so the more outrageous of a story they can run, the more anger they can incite in people. Because guess what? Turns out anger is the most likely thing to get people clicking.
So
they've done studies on this. And
so are you suggesting that Fox News and CNN and NPR, funded both by tax dollars and private donations, and ESPN, that these institutions are exercising the spirit of contention to stir up those one against another so that they can profit financially off them?
Absolutely. And I don't know, I want to make sure that we're not adding to that, you know, by having people like get up in arms against what's her name? Is it Rachel Richardson?
Oh yeah, I think she's innocent in all of this.
Exactly. And so I want to make sure that we do what we can to like calm things down and make it so that it's like, hey, look, the way out of this is not to try to point fingers and blame and get angry and angrier and angrier and angrier. That's only going to play into the hands of the media trying to make more money off of all the stories, right? What we need to do is, like you were talking about, be committed to finding out what actually happened, which unfortunately news sources are really bad at helping us with lately.
Yeah.
And give things time. Give it a week or two to before you form your opinion and start spouting it online, you know? Because I've seen people who have said things even in the past like 3 days that they're like, well, now that more information's come out, I don't know if this is really accurate, right? We should all be better by now at recognizing, hey, we don't have all of the facts in these situations. Let's back off and give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to reflect something that Kwaku said here. Like, when will the church wake up to the fact that the news media hates you? Post 2008, the news media made its choice that it hates members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And will they stop doing things hoping? Do you know what our last podcast was? Oh my gosh, I just realized this. Our last podcast was If We're Wrong, Who Is Right? Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
That we recorded? Okay. In it, one of the biggest things Kwaku said that he was tired of is he said he liked that J-Dubs, like, they have their Bible and they make no bones about it. They like make no excuses. Like, yeah, we got it. We like it. It's awesome. You know? And of course, what he's saying is kind of meant for comedic effect, to be hyperbole. But he said something interesting. He said, you know, in our church, we're always like, oh yeah, here's a written statement condemning something bad that was said, something mean said like 20 years ago. Will you like us now? Will you like us now? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I really feel like the church office building needs to learn a lesson from this. They need to learn a lesson that the media hates you and is constantly trying to profit off of you. So instead of just thinking, oh, if we sacrifice some poor mentally handicapped kid at the altar of your social justice, will you like us now? We're social justicey too. Here's a strongly worded letter, you know? Or maybe will you sit back for a second and say, okay, a complaint's been lodged. We will investigate this. And if somebody needs to go down for it, they will go down. If you are wrong, you will hear from us.
Yeah.
And stop letting these people just walk all over you, because you create a lot of victims. When you don't handle it like an adult, not only do you victimize the poor kid that's been kicked out indefinitely for life and ruin his life, because he's already got, whether they're low level or high level, apparently he's already got mental handicap issues, okay, from what I've read. Now on top of it, you're adding racial slur hurler to his resume if he ever tries to get a job, which isn't going to be good. And on top of it, you make Rachel Richardson a victim. Because a girl that thought she heard something under duress of adrenaline and competitive spirit and being faced away from a crowd that she thought might have said something, well, now you make her look bad. Because video evidence wasn't allowed to be accumulated and wasn't allowed to be submitted, analyzed, and brought out before you went to the news. And why did you go to the news? You went to the news because there was two people running a campaign. As I showed on the screen earlier, the two people that were running the campaigns that decided to go to this guns blazing first before anybody else did appear to have been the godmother, who, when you look at her, I'm going to pull it up right here so everybody can see it. Sorry, I can see it. When she's running a political campaign, and when you look at her campaign ads, it's all anti-white stuff, super woke, okay? And then on top of it, you've got a sitting member of Congress, Renita Shannon, literally saying that Mormons don't think that people of color can get to heaven, or running a whisper campaign. And then she botches a bunch of stats saying less than 1% are Mormon. I think what she meant to say is that 99%...
Less than 1% are black.
Or maybe she was trying to say that 99% of the university is Mormon. I don't know what she was trying to say, okay? But she comes in and says that we're running a whisper campaign, replacing fact with fiction, never minding the fact that, dude, how many athletes are on full ride scholarships to that university? How many guys sitting next to me in the Spanish department were imports from all over the world? Because as a worldwide church, BYU heavily prioritizes students from outside of the Western United States of America. I had an extremely diverse experience being a Spanish major and athlete at BYU. I mean, there's no excuse for what these people have said, and it seems like those that are profiting off of it are the ones that are saying outlandish and crazy stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, back to Brad. Sorry, I'm clicking.
Yeah, it's really a just horrible situation, and I think one thing that we can do is try to find a way to like stand up for what we know is right and stand up for truth without being jerks about it, right? Because that's easy to get into an angry situation and assume bad intent when there's something neutral happening, right?
Yeah.
And I want to be an advocate for, hey, let's take a second and see what we can do to be as Christ-like as possible in this and turn the other cheek. That doesn't mean let people walk all over you.
Yeah.
That means, like we've talked about before, right? Stand up for what you know is true, but do it in a way that doesn't play their game.
Yeah, and also, I want to mirror what you say, that I think as members of the church, we don't want to run out and say, oh, look, it's another tied knot at, who was that NASCAR driver that thought somebody was making a racially insensitive symbol out of the pull down on his NASCAR garage. He said it looked he said it looked like a noose, but then they realized that it was the overhand knot that they tied on every single garage, and that nobody was trying to, make him feel unwelcome or threatened, but it was literally just the knot that was tied at the end so that the guys could grab the garage door handles. I can't remember his name, but it was the famous NASCAR incident that happened like a year ago. We don't want to say, hey, this is another Jussie Smollett. We don't want to do any of that, okay? That what I want to do is I want us to move forward and, yes, to a certain extent, be the peacemakers and turn the other cheek and say, hey, look, it looks like this claim the video evidence, doesn't play it out. And we need to handle this right and be adults about it and peacemakers about this, so that when we shine a light on the, like, I don't want to say the real, because that's not fair. I have a lot of friends who are black athletes that have had all kinds of crazy, heinous stuff said about them on the field. That's actually one of the things I was talking with about Mauli Bonron. I've experienced racism myself. He's experienced racism on the field. His was apparently he gave me a bunch of examples of really heinous stuff that other even coaches said less than 20 years ago, while he was a running back in a high school football team. And I told him, hey, look, dude, I remember when my high school hired a Spanish-speaking soccer coach, and he's purposely benched all the English speakers because he didn't want to have to yell English on the field. And all of the white kids got benched and told you're not going to play because you don't speak Spanish. So it's like, I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of anti-white racism. He knows what it's like to be on the receiving end of anti-black racism. And it's a really crappy thing to go through as a young athlete. In my case, being a 16-year-old soccer player in Southern California, and her case being, gosh, this poor girl's only like 19 and she's playing at Duke Volleyball, which already has enough stresses to perform. You know what I'm saying? So we want to make sure we bring that temperature down, and to be sensitive that though it looks like this didn't play out, you do want to be sensitive to the times when it is real and it does happen like that, like what happened to Kwaku. Like, we have video evidence of John DeLynn literally saying that he's a self-loathing BLACK man, with his guest Madeline saying the Mormon church only likes him because I can't even repeat what they say, you know, because apparently they say Kwaku's white and speaks English good enough, which actually should be well enough. I thought it was really funny that the person criticizing black grammar was actually used good instead of well. I thought that was actually really kind of ironic, you know. But like, we need to treat this well with the same habeas corpus that we demand, so that when cases that have video evidence that we can submit with it carry more weight and more water and don't get just brushed off as though that thing that ended up not being true.
Yeah. And we've got another super chat saying you don't have to try to find a way to stand up. You just have to do it, period. Hiding away serves no purpose.
True that. Who said that?
Dwayneson.
Oh, dude, I can't see it because you can see them on your screen. I can't see them on mine right now. I'd have to close out of our streaming software. I've got a very complicated system here that's barely sticking together with shoestring and hanger wire and bubble gum. You know what I'm saying? And so, all right.
Yeah, but I totally agree with that. You just have to do it. You just have to stand up for what you know is true. And I would add, take the time to know what is right? Don't just go off of things that you see that you agree with before you get to the bottom of anything, right? Now, just a quick recap, because I think we have some people who have joined in and who haven't been here for the whole time. So we're talking about the BYU and Duke volleyball situation, where somebody who Rachel Richardson, a Duke volleyball player, thought she heard somebody yelling racial slurs at her. She reported it. BYU put a cop and a member of their athletic department up there to support her and try to find a way to stop it if it was happening. And the cop, in what he said he did not hear anything further. Richardson is saying that it got worse later on. So our speculation is that she probably heard something different and thought that it was a slur that was aimed at her. Just because there's no video evidence, there's nothing showing that actually happened. We don't. Yeah. In all the recording of everything at the show or at the game, it didn't show up.
Yeah. And also, we did some deep dives looking at the roster of the team, and there's a lot of last names that, in the cacophony of things getting cheered, could be mistaken for racial slurs, similar to me mistaking somebody only less than 24 hours ago in Home Depot calling out my name when it was actually Latino who was actually saying cargado, which means the thing that is loaded, outside of Home Depot when they were loading something. I thought he said Cardon. So we do not at all blame this young athlete. it seems like, by the way, this young athlete apparently was operating in super good faith. You know, like, I think she was mistaken saying BYU didn't do anything. And it seems like some people tried to influence her in the formulation of her statement. But like, the least motivated to attack the Mormon Church person that I've seen in this whole interaction actually seems to be the athlete herself. It looks like a bunch of other news organizations that profit off of this kind of thing, dare I say the spirit of contention, are the ones that went out and started blasting BYU, and NPR, where your tax dollars go, and CNN, who we know never lies, you know, as well as you can see in the picture here, people that profit from this kind of thing, such as Renita Shannon, and it looks like, unfortunately, the godmother of this athlete who appears to be running for office as a judge somewhere and has a history of making very racially insensitive remarks towards white people. It looks like there's a lot of people that jumped on this bandwagon and started trying to formulate a profitable but untrue narrative about BYU, my alma mater, and its fan base being very racist and running a whisper campaign saying that people of color cannot get into heaven, which is totally false. So,
yep. And yeah, we have another question from your wife. Wait, why did a handicapped fan get banned? So the quick recap on that is he was kind of approaching the cop after the game, and he was being socially awkward, was trying to get too close to the opposing team. And in that situation, because he was trying to get close to the other team, he ended up getting thrown out for that.
Yeah.
And
apparently
they identified him by his voice, said that he sounded like the person who was yelling the racial slurs. But it turns out he probably wasn't in the student section, which is right near where the volleyball players are playing, right by the server, right?
Yeah, and at least from the articles I've read, his crime in this whole thing was actually just impeding the entrance and egress, and somehow what they called harassing students coming and going from the court, and not actually anything he said. Like, it wasn't like libel or slander or like hate speech or anything like that. It is having to do with the entrance and egress of people on and off the court or from the facility. So anyway, we can move on to another topic before we go here. We got another 5 minutes. If any of you guys have super chats or questions for us while we're here together. I'm still kind of ticked that Kwaku passionately said he wanted to talk about this and then ends up being the only guy that can't show up. So you got two white guys trying to defend their alma mater. You know what I'm saying? And we promise we're not racist. Well,
Yeah, so Kwaku apparently had a fire at his apartment building and got busted out because of fire alarm stuff going on, so he hasn't been able to get on.
What's up with these fires? There's the Castaic fire not far from my parents' house right now. I had to drive over and check them out. If I would have known we were talking about fires, I would have uploaded the footage. Less than a half mile from their house, it's all billows of smoke, and you can see the fires from the. Yeah, we're kind of used to it. We're kind of used to it here in Southern California, though. When I was a kid, there was these shirts that said "I survived the," and it said the mudslides, the fires, the earthquakes, the riots, and it's these things just happen all the time if you live in Los Angeles. It's just insanity here. They literally passed a law that after 2030, you can't sell gas fueled vehicles, or 2035. And they've outlawed all of these things on fossil fuels and cars that run on gasoline. And you have to buy electric cars now. But now they're asking you not to charge those electric cars for fear of the blackout, because they've never ever gotten enough electricity into California. So you're forbidden from driving cars that run on gasoline while simultaneously being asked not to charge your electric car. It's
dude, I don't understand why they're not more into nuclear. Nuclear energy is the answer. I don't understand what is going on with the whole green movement trying to embrace just solar and wind when nuclear is such a reliable option that has by far the least issues associated with it. Holy crow. I don't get it.
Did you say holy crow?
Yeah.
Is that a Canadian thing?
I don't know.
I've never heard holy crow before. I've heard you have to eat crow, but I've never heard holy crow.
Oh.
Oh, that's
No,
kind of cool.
I don't know.
Wow. So I'm going to start saying "Holy crow" instead of "Holy smoke" as I'm wearing a crow. Look at that. Woo, woo. Actually, that's technically.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
A little bit of a
So
subliminal
"Holy
thing.
crow." You know what I found out today is a guy I work with is actually, it's kind of funny, in Southern California. He's from Spanish Fork, right? Of all the places to be from, he's from Spanish
Really?
Fork. Yeah. And it's super cool.
funny.
Yeah, super cool dude. Married the younger sister of a buddy of mine that I grew up with. So anyway, you know those big windmills you see in Spanish Fork at the mouth of the canyon?
Yeah.
That's not electricity for Utahns.
Yeah, it gets piped to California.
It gets sold to California.
Like, what the heck? And it just drives me insane. Like, why are we doing that? Why are we setting ourselves up with this infrastructure that, by the way, kills bats and birds? Like, for the environmentalists who are concerned about the environmental impact of things, you don't mind wind turbines?
Dude, do you know how many like endangered birds that big suns, you know, when you're driving up to Vegas from California or driving to California from Vegas, you see that massive solar farm on the northern side of
with
the freeway?
like the bulb of the sun just reflecting onto all of
Yeah,
those.
it's a 360-degree solar farm that reflects into one spot. So many birds are attracted to it from all over because they see the reflection, and when they fly into it, they get cooked instantaneously. That apparently, like, they had to try and redesign it so it's not so retro-reflective, thus being also less efficient. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because it was killing way too many endangered birds, and they've never been able to stop it. And like
Oh,
the biggest
no.
thing killing endangered birds in like a 30-mile radius is apparently that thing. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh,
it's
man.
like, it's the most
And-
heinous thing. And that's what you and I both loved about Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
Number 2 thing on his platform.
Andrew Thorium Yang. It was a beautiful dream. Because like I know people get worried about like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island and stuff like that, but like it's not like nuclear technology has not progressed at all. It has progressed a little bit. And imagine how much more it would progress if we were actually investing in it at all.
Well, and
you
the
know?
problem isn't the technology. We actually have the technology. The problem is the culture of maintenance. In Chernobyl, just like the Italians let all their infrastructure just go to crap because they're all corrupt and they're pocketing the money that's meant to pave the roads and meant to refill the mortar in the walls and everything. And they steal it because it's a corrupt governmental public-private partnership culture full of a bunch of corrupt bureaucrats that steal the money instead of putting it into the infrastructure. You know, all these places where there's been problems, they're in nuclear reactors that have not been maintained properly for 20, 30 years, okay? Meanwhile, here, I was, when I was doing acting and modeling in New York, a guy that started getting into it with me was really funny. He was a nuclear engineer, and he just decided to reinvent himself. And he would take his days off from the power plant that gives 40% of the energy into the grid in Manhattan is from nuclear. And it's from a plant up the Hudson. And the only environmental impact that that plant on the Hudson has is it raises the temperature of the water in the Hudson 1/2 of 1 degree Fahrenheit. Okay. So it has virtually no measurable environmental impact.
Yeah.
And it's giving like, it's 40%, 20%. I don't remember what exact the percentage is. It varies per year and per consumption, but it's massive. It's a formidable amount of the electricity that Manhattan, the big glowing dot you can see from the sky, you know what I'm saying, on the northeastern seaboard, it's giving them a huge chunk of their electricity. And he's telling me that like he still has his favorite pair of shoes inside of that facility. I was like, what? Why? And he says, because we can't exit or enter the facility without going through this like triple door system and showing our IDs and everything. And they also do Geiger counter checks on us so that if there's any kind of material, like we can't take it out or we can't even residually accidentally have it on. It's like worse than the TSA apparently, you know, where they see if there's like gunpowder residue on your bag or something like that, you know? And so anyways, like, yeah, one day for some reason, like, they flagged my shoes. There was some microscopic element of some microscopic traceable amount of something radioactive on my shoes. And it's like, and so I couldn't take them from the facility. I had to like take off my shoes and leave them at the facility so I could leave. So it's like, we've got such a high level of maintenance on our nuclear facilities that people are having to leave their shoes inside, their favorite shoes. Meanwhile, you go to these other countries and they're like under threat of these things melting down because everybody's so corrupt and incompetent. Those are two wildly different societies.
And from what I understand, even the way that the technology goes now, like you used to have cooling rods that would be lifted up into the nuclear reactor to cool it if things went wrong. But now, like in Canadian reactors, they have cooling rods that are above that will drop in, so that if something goes wrong, if there's a catastrophic failure of any kind, it just drops them. There's nothing that needs to happen to like push them up in, right? There's no,
So
it's like safer than it used to be.
It's like a counterbalanced elevator. If the power fails, elevators fall upwards instead of crashing downwards. That's really interesting to know. And so really fast. So Canada, do they have widespread nuclear power?
I don't know. I don't know what percentage of Canada's power comes from nuclear.
Oh, because that's a huge part of France's economy. France builds nuclear power plants in somebody's backyard if they give them permission, for heaven's sakes. And they're super pro-nuclear over there, which is interesting because you'd think it's a very kind of socialist in la libertad, you know what I'm saying, and all that other stuff. That was a Spanish word mixed with a very poor French accent, for those of you who are wondering. You know what I'm saying? Nice. And they have so much extra nuclear energy, they're a net exporter to the rest of Europe. Like a huge part of their national economy is just the production of nuclear electricity and the export of nuclear electricity. If we did that here, we wouldn't have to be building windmills in motherfucking Spanish Fork and then piping it over an entire another state, Area 51 and Las Vegas.
And the Sierra Nevada range. Like, what the heck? Yeah. No, I think that, honestly, I cannot imagine why anyone would think nuclear is not a better option than solar or wind energy, unless they've just been wildly misinformed, you know?
Yeah.
And like, maybe it's the fear over what to do with nuclear waste. But like, even that is not anywhere near as big of a problem as what you do with all of the old solar panels.
Oh,
when the solar panels stop working and you have all of these solar panels that can end up leaching bad like lead and cadmium back into the water.
We
like,
still use lead acid battery technology, and it's like literally 60 years old. You know?
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So yeah, that's
if
my nuclear energy rant.
Okay, so 2-minute warning. If Kwaku's not going to jump on with us, then I guess we've run out of things to talk about. Actually, we haven't run out of things to talk about, but I did promise my wife that I'd go inside and I'd keep it to just 60 to 90 minutes, and we're coming up on 90 here. So if you got any last super chats, any other questions, you want to direct the conversation in these last 3 minutes, feel free and go ahead. I'll just make some announcements here. You got any cool performances coming up before I do my thing and talk about what we're doing with the channel? Do you got any cool stuff coming up where people can come and see you, dude, in all of your thespian and comedic efforts?
Oh, just like, I never know what my schedule is going to look like completely, but I perform with Comedy Sports in Provo relatively often. It's a blast. If you're near, you should.
Yeah, you're pretty funny, dog. I've seen you live.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Me and Riley, we both perform with it. It's real fun.
Are you allowed to be on stage at the same time, or is that kind of considered like cheating somehow?
Oh, we're on stage together all the time.
Really?
What?
Have you ever gotten in trouble with your wife for making a joke that was off color and she didn't like, and then she yelled at you when you got home for it?
Not yet.
Oh, I regularly get yelled at by Brittany for jokes that I make in public.
Nice.
So that's hilarious. So anyway, fans of the channel, friends, family, all buddies here that are with us. Kwaku, we wish you luck in your fiery endeavors.
Yes.
Wish my parents luck in their fiery endeavors.
We might have to do another episode getting his take on this, because
yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, the memes he sent me, he was like deep diving and private investigating this whole thing.
Yeah, he had a lot to say about it on Twitter, so I think it's important we get his take.
Oh yeah, I didn't catch all that. I saw some of them. I see his retweets from some of my other friends more often than I see his tweets. Something about the algorithm doesn't show me what he says as often as I see it retweeted by other people. So I hope Elon Musk reconsiders buying Twitter, because I just think it's a very poor social media platform. I actually think Facebook is the best. The only problem is that Facebook has been completely taken over by boomers. You know what I'm saying? And like it's almost like a utility now instead of like a hip social media platform, you know?
Yeah.
And even Instagram kind of isn't what it used to be. So I'm actually, dude, I used to make fun of these people and couldn't stand them, but now I'm becoming one. I'm actually doing TikTok, dog.
Oh yeah.
Are you getting into TikTok?
I've gotten onto it a little bit. There's actually a wildly good amount of like good content tips for writers. Like I'm
Really?
surprised at how useful there's really good writing advice on TikTok. There's like some really good educational video stuff on there.
You know what's crazy is my buddy Reed Moon. Well, our buddy now because we've
Yeah.
recorded with him. He's blowing up on TikTok, dude. Like you know those guys that have millions of views that like like PewDiePie and the dude with the coiffed hair and everything. They're always doing this week in pop culture and they analyze the memes and stuff. Like Reed Moon is coming up on those feeds, dog.
Really?
Yeah, like I mean, I'm watching.
Dude,
this.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm watching this and like Reed Moon's like coming across the screen. It's like, whoa, holy smoke! So anyway, in the comments, I'm gonna leave this. I'm gonna leave the stream on for another minute after we go. But in the comments, we played this really fun game with Reed Moon. We go into his rare bookstore, where you're allowed to just name one person, place, or thing that's historical, and he gives himself 1 degree of separation to come out with some kind of relic that has to do with it. So for example, if you walk in and you say, oh, Joseph Smith, he'll come out with Joseph Smith's personal copy of the Book of Mormon. If you say, somebody once famously said George Washington, he said, oh, okay, cool. Well, check this out. I have Martha Washington's letters thanking people coming to his funeral and relieving them of debts or something like that. So that's 1 degree of separation, like his wife, you know. You can walk in and say like, oh, a simple phrase like, oh, E equals MC squared, and he'll come out with a postcard from Albert Einstein. You can say World War II, and he comes out with like original letters from Anne Frank that preceded the Diary of Anne Frank. You know, like, I mean, he just comes out with all kinds of crazy cool stuff, original copies of the King James Bible, the Tyndale Bible. I could speak about it for days. So we're going to go back there and film. It's going to be really fun. And we're going to do that game with him, except for I'd like to have that game performed. We'll possibly even live stream it so that audience members can actually go in and, you know, like say, like, oh, what about this? And he'll perform the game with our audience. And it'll be a really cool, sick live stream event that looks like we're getting permission to do, and I think should be pretty fun. So if you'd be interested in that, let us know in the chat. Please tell us if you think that would be wicked. Also, if any of you guys are graphic designers or anybody that wants to help design the merch for our channel, we're going to start making merch here pretty soon. So hit us up at midnightmormons.com and just send us some examples of your work and so on and so forth. Also, we're going to be doing some really funny short form comedy. If you got funny comedic scripts you think you got to get made, if you got really cool music videos you think you got to get made, or any kind of cultural creativity that you want to push out there, we really want to help change the culture. So we're going to be making more cultural things, such as music and film and so on and so forth. If you've got anything of good report and praiseworthy, we seek after those things. So send it our way. Anything else you want to say before I close it down? BT Whitbeck?
Oh, just, I mean, when it comes down to the BYU and Duke volleyball situation, we've just got to do what we can to be good followers of Christ. Stand up for what we know is right. Don't just lay down and let people walk all over you with a false narrative that isn't real. Look for what's true and stand up for what you know is right and be kind about it.
Oh, dude, well said. That's why you're going to be a prophet. Blessed are the peacemakers.
I found a fun quote about prophets from Brigham Young, by the way,
recently.
We'll have to do that on another episode.
Oh, a teaser. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Midnight